How do you trust again when your world shatters? I'm 24, just trying to piece my life back together after the worst betrayal I could imagine. 2 years ago, I was head over heels for Jake, a guy I met in college. He was charming, thoughtful, the kind of person who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. We clicked fast, shared late-night talks about dreams, laughed over stupid memes, and planned a future I thought was ours. I'm from a tight-knit but conservative family, where dating comes with a rulebook. No living together, marry young, keep it proper. After a year with Jake, I figured it was time to bring him home. My parents gave him a polite but chilly reception, their eyes screaming, "Is this guy good enough?" My sisters, though? They loved him. Grace, 22, and Emma, only 11, couldn't get enough of him. Grace especially. She'd tease him like they were old friends, and we'd laugh about her stealing my boyfriend. Emma just thought he was the coolest. It felt good, you know? Like my family was starting to get it. I trusted Jake completely. He worked in a different city, so we'd meet up on weekends, stealing moments over coffee or movies. Everything seemed perfect. Until it wasn't. That weekend at his place started like any other. We grabbed burgers, watched some forgettable action flick, and I was sprawled on his couch, feeling safe. He hopped in the shower, and his phone buzzed on the coffee table. Once, twice, then again. I'm not the snooping type, trust is trust, right? But something gnawed at me like a whisper I couldn't ignore. I grabbed his phone, heart pounding, and saw Grace's name, my sister. No big deal, I thought. She's family. But when I opened the chat, my stomach dropped. Flirty texts, winking emojis, plans to meet up. Months of them. "Can't wait to see you," she wrote. "Miss you already," he replied. My hands shook as I scrolled, each message a knife. Inside jokes I wasn't part of, late-night chats, secret meetups. My sister and my boyfriend betraying me behind my back. I couldn't breathe. I snapped screenshots, sent them to myself, and bolted before he could dry off. The apartment door slammed behind me, my pulse racing like I'd just run a marathon. I ignored his calls, texts lighting up my phone like fireworks. I didn't want his excuses. I sent the screenshots to our friend group chat and blocked him. Done. Over? But Grace, that cut deeper. We'd grown up thick as thieves, only 2 years apart, sharing secrets while our parents were too busy with their own lives. She was my rock, or so I thought. The next morning I packed a bag and flew home, rage burning through me. I didn't care about making a scene. When I got to my parents' house, Grace was lounging at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone like nothing was wrong. I slapped the printed screenshots down in front of her, my voice shaking. Mom and Dad were there, their faces frozen. Grace didn't even flinch. "Yeah, I did it. So what?" she said, shrugging. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she cared. Mom snapped, slapping Grace, something I'd never seen. Dad yelled, telling her to pack her bags and get out by the end of the week. I thought that was it, justice served. But 2 days later, Grace dropped a bomb. She was pregnant with Jake's baby. Just like that, everything changed. My parents, who'd been ready to disown her, melted. "We can't abandon her now," Mom said, her voice soft. "She's family." I lost it. "Are you serious?" I shouted. "She betrayed me, and you're taking her side?" Their excuses, family unity, supporting Grace, felt like a slap. I grabbed my stuff, told them to never contact me again, and walked out. Only Emma, sweet little Emma, stayed unblocked. She didn't deserve to be caught in this mess. Driving away, my hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The betrayal wasn't just Jake's. It was my family choosing Grace, choosing appearances over me. I felt erased, like I didn't matter. Little did I know, this was just the start. The real storm was coming, and it would test everything I had left. As I drove away, the scene in the kitchen played over in my head like a bad movie on loop. I could still feel the cool tile under my feet as I stormed in. The air thick with the smell of Mom's morning coffee brewing on the counter. Grace looked up from her phone, her eyes widening just a fraction before she masked it with that infuriating calm. "What are you doing here?" she asked, but I didn't answer. I just pulled out the printed screenshots, my hands still trembling from the flight, and slammed them down so hard the table rattled. The papers fanned out, messages glaring up at us all. Her flirty words, his eager responses, the dates lining up with times I'd been away for work. Mom was chopping vegetables nearby, her knife pausing mid-slice, and Dad was reading the paper, his glasses slipping down his nose. Explain this, I demanded, my voice cracking like thunder in the quiet room. Grace glanced at the pages, then back at me, her shrug so casual it made my blood boil. Yeah, I did it. So what? You're always so dramatic. Dramatic? The word hit me like a punch. We'd shared everything growing up, late-night whispers about crushes, borrowing clothes, covering for each other when parents were strict. And now this? Betraying me with Jake, the one person I'd let in completely? Mom's face twisted in shock first. She dropped the knife with a clatter and stormed over, her hand flying before I could even process it. The slap echoed, Grace's cheek turning red as she reeled back. How could you? Mom screamed, her voice raw with something I'd never heard from her. Pure disappointment mixed with rage. Dad jumped up, his chair scraping the floor, face flushed. This is unacceptable. You're out of here, Grace. Pack your things. You have a week. His words were sharp, final, the kind he used when we were kids breaking rules. For a moment, I felt vindicated, like maybe justice existed in our family after all. But even then, doubt crept in. I saw Grace's eyes well up, not with remorse, but with that manipulative glint she always had when cornered. I paced the kitchen, my mind racing through memories. The way she'd laugh extra loud at Jake's jokes during family dinners, how she'd text him innocent questions about me that now seemed loaded. Had I been blind? Or had they been that sneaky? I yelled at her, words tumbling out about trust, sisterhood, how she'd ruined everything. She just sat there, rubbing her cheek, muttering something about how Jake and I weren't that serious anyway. It was like she didn't get it, or didn't care. 2 days later, the bomb dropped, shifting everything in ways I couldn't have predicted. I was still at home, avoiding Grace but sticking around to see if the punishment held. The house felt tense, conversations clipped, Emma peeking in with worried eyes. Then Grace called a family meeting in the living room, her voice unusually small. We all sat on the worn couch, the one with the stain from Emma's spilled juice years ago. I'm pregnant, she announced, hands on her belly like it was a shield. It's Jake's. The room went silent, the tick of the wall clock suddenly loud. My stomach twisted. I pictured them together, the secret meetings, and now this permanent tie. Dad's anger deflated like a balloon, his shoulders slumping. A baby? He whispered, as if that changed the rules. Mom's eyes softened, tears welling. We have to support her, she said, turning to me like I was the obstacle. Family sticks together, no matter what. No matter what? What about me? I exploded, standing up so fast the coffee table shook. You're joking. She sleeps with my boyfriend, gets pregnant, and now she's the victim? You're enabling her. I ranted about the betrayal, how it wasn't just a mistake but months of lies. But they weren't listening. Dad talked about responsibility, Mom about not abandoning a grandchild. Grace sat smug, like she'd won. It was like the pregnancy erased her actions, turning her into some fragile thing we all had to protect. I couldn't stay. The air felt suffocating, their excuses ringing in my ears. I grabbed my bag, the same one I'd packed in a hurry, and headed for the door. Don't contact me again, I said, my voice steady despite the tears burning my eyes. Any of you. Except Emma, she was innocent, a kid caught in the crossfire. I hugged her quick, whispering I'd call soon. As I stepped out into the crisp air, the door clicking shut behind me, I felt a mix of freedom and loss. They'd chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. But walking to my car, keys jingling in my shaking hand, I wondered if this was really the end. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mom, somehow getting through. It was a wedding invitation. Jake and Grace, tying the knot like it was a fairy tale. For family unity, the message said. I laughed bitterly, then blocked it too. Unity? After what they'd done? No way. But the hurt lingered, a constant ache. As the days turned to weeks, I tried to rebuild. Work became my escape, long hours burying the pain. But whispers reached me through cousins, Grace's baby shower, a big event my parents hosted. They spun the story. I was the one who abandoned them, Grace the glue holding it together. It stung, their lies twisting the knife. And then Emma texted about Mom gossiping that I needed to marry soon, to avoid scandal since Grace was doing it first. Appearances, always appearances. It made me furious, but also sad. My family cared more about what outsiders thought than my broken heart. I stayed silent, refusing to engage, but inside the storm brewed stronger. The weeks blurred into a haze after I left home that day. I'd thrown myself into work, staring at my computer screen until my eyes burned, anything to drown out the echoes of Mom's excuses and Grace's shrug. My apartment felt too quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every creak and sigh, reminding me of what I'd lost. I blocked their numbers, deleted old photos of family gatherings where Grace and I smiled like nothing could break us. But Emma? I couldn't cut her off. She was just a kid, innocent in all this, her texts popping up with questions about school or silly memes that made me smile through the ache. "Miss you," she'd write, and I'd reply quick, keeping it light, not wanting to burden her with my mess. 2 months in, the grapevine started whispering. A cousin I still talk to mentioned Grace's baby shower, my parents throwing a lavish party, balloons and cakes like celebrating a victory. "Everyone's excited," she said, but then hesitated. "They're saying you bailed on the family, that Grace is the one trying to fix things." Fix things? The words twisted in my gut. After stealing my boyfriend, getting pregnant, and watching our parents flip sides, she was the hero? I paced my living room, the carpet muffling my footsteps, fury bubbling up. I wanted to call Mom, unleash everything I'd bottled, but I knew it dragged me back into their web. Instead, I stayed quiet, letting the anger simmer like a pot about to boil over. A few days later, Emma's text hit harder. She updated me on home stuff, school projects, what she ate for dinner, but slipped in how Mom was gossiping. "She says you need to get married soon," Emma wrote. "Doesn't want people talking about Grace doing it first." I stared at the screen, coffee going cold in my mug. Married? I hadn't dated since Jake, the thought making my skin crawl. But to Mom, it was all about optics, younger sister wed and pregnant before the older one? Scandal. Never mind the betrayal that started it. It was ridiculous, her meddling from afar, controlling the narrative even when I was gone. Sadness washed over me then, mixing with the rage. Nothing I did was enough, even my pain was secondary to their image. I threw myself deeper into routines. Gym sessions where sweat blurred my vision, late-night walks under streetlights buzzing faintly. But the isolation gnawed, a constant reminder of the family I'd thought unbreakable. Grace's wedding came and went without me. I didn't go, obviously. Couldn't stomach seeing them play happy couple after what they'd done. My cousin filled me in later. Fancy venue, white dress hiding the bump, parents beaming like proud hosts. "They said you skipped for work," she told me. Work? As if. They covered the scandal with lies about responsibility, quick marriage to legitimize the baby. It hurt more than I expected, not the event itself, but how they erased me. Pretending our family was perfect, no rifts, no daughter who'd walked away. I sat on my balcony that night, city lights twinkling below, wondering if they'd even mention me. Probably not. Time ticked on, months slipping by in a numb routine. Work promotions kept me busy, friends checked in, but the void lingered. I figured they'd leave me alone eventually. Why chase someone who'd cut ties? But families like mine don't let go easy. One night my phone rang late, jolting me from half-sleep. Emma's name flashed, her voice tiny and tearful when I answered. "Dad's gone," she sobbed. "He passed away." Stunned, I sat up, sheets tangling around me. Dad? We'd never been super close. His traditional ways clashed with my independence, but he was Dad. The Rock, even if silent. Emma said he'd been sick for months, but they hadn't told me. "Mom didn't want to stress you," she explained. "Stress me? Like I didn't deserve to know, to say goodbye?" Anger flared hot, but grief tempered it. I booked a flight first thing, not for them, but for Emma. She needed me. Landing back home felt surreal, the airport bustle fading as I drove familiar roads, leaves rustling in the wind. The house looked the same, neat lawn, curtains drawn, but inside was chaos. Mom and Grace pounced the second I walked in, voices sharp. "You're only here for the money," Mom accused, eyes narrowed. Grace sneered, "Selfish as always, we needed you, and you vanished." Needed me, after everything? I bit back words, focusing on Emma's hug, her small frame shaking. We barely grieved Dad. Talk turned quick to inheritance, who got what, like he was a transaction. The will reading was a powder keg. In the lawyer's stuffy office, leather chairs creaking, we sat tense. Dad left me 40%, Emma 30%, Mom 20%, Grace just 10%. Shock rippled through me. I hadn't expected anything, not after the fallout. But Grace and Jake exploded. "She doesn't deserve it," Grace yelled, face twisted. "We have a kid. Give it up." Threats followed, Jake muttering I'd regret it. I stood firm. No way, but unease settled in. This wasn't over. As I left, their glares burned my back, the air heavy with unspoken promises of more trouble. After the will reading, I headed back to my hotel, the lawyer's office fading in my rearview mirror like a bad dream I couldn't shake. The drive was a blur, rain pattering against the windshield, matching the storm inside me. Their voices echoed, Grace's shrill demands, Jake's low threats, Mom's silent glares. How had it come to this? Grieving Dad while fighting over scraps like vultures. I wasn't even thinking about the money. It felt tainted, a final twist from a man who'd stayed quiet too long. But giving it up? No. That would mean letting them win, erasing my pain like it never happened. Back in my room, I collapsed on the stiff bed, the air conditioner humming a lonely tune. I stared at the ceiling, cracks spiderwebbing like my fractured family. Isolation hit harder now, deepened by Dad's death. Before, cutting ties was my choice. Now, it felt permanent, a void where home used to be. I thought back to Grace's wedding, months ago, but fresh in my mind. My cousin's updates had painted it vivid. Elegant hall, flowers everywhere, parents toasting as if no betrayal lingered. They'd lied about my absence, work commitments, they said, while whispering I was too bitter to show. And the pressures? Mom's gossip about me needing to marry, to outpace the scandal of Grace, going first. Even after Dad's passing, I bet she was still at it, appearances trumping grief. It all piled on, making the loneliness ache like a bruise. A couple days later, my phone buzzed with a message from the lawyer. We had a follow-up on estate details, and I dragged myself there, hoping for closure amid the chaos. The office smelled of old books and coffee, a stark contrast to the turmoil outside. He handed me an envelope first, sealed with Dad's handwriting. He wanted you to have this when the time was right, the lawyer said, his tone gentle. I hesitated, fingers tracing the paper, memories flooding. Dad's quiet nods during family dinners, his rare smiles when I aced school. Why now? I opened it slowly, the crinkle loud in the quiet room. His words were short, but they hit hard. He apologized for not standing up when Grace's mess unfolded, for feeling trapped by Mom and the situation. I regret not doing more for you, he wrote. You deserved better. Tears blurred the ink. I was angry he'd waited until death to say it, but a sliver of peace crept in, like sunlight through clouds. If only he'd spoken sooner, maybe things would have shifted. We went over assets after, numbers swimming before me, but my mind wandered to what-ifs. Dad intervening during the confrontation, backing me instead of silence. On the way back, Emma called, her voice wobbly. Grace is talking trash about you everywhere, she said, saying you're stealing the inheritance, turning us against her. I gripped the steering wheel, traffic honking around me. Of course. Grace, master of victimhood, spinning tales in town like she hadn't started this. Shops and faces blurred past, people who might have heard the lies, judging me without knowing. It hurt, but didn't surprise. She'd always twisted stories to suit her. Back at the hotel, I needed a break from the spiral. I picked up Emma for dinner, a cozy diner with checkered tables and the sizzle of burgers. We chatted about her school, avoiding the heavy stuff at first, but she opened up. Mom was still pushing the marriage narrative, even now, whispering to relatives that my single status was embarrassing post-Dad's death. Like that's what matters, Emma huffed. I reassured her it wasn't her fault, hugging her tight before dropping her off. But the night air felt heavier walking back, shadows lengthening like doubts. The next morning jolted me awake, missed calls from unknowns, texts flooding in. Back off or pay, one said. You're tearing the family apart. Names, accusations, threats that chilled me. I forwarded them to the lawyer, hands shaking over my coffee mug, the bitter taste mirroring my mood. Who else but Jake? He'd threatened before, and this reeked of him. I tried ignoring it, but paranoia set in. Every glance from strangers felt loaded. Later, heading to my car in the lot, I froze. All 4 tires slashed, rubber deflated like my resolve. The pavement gleamed wet from morning dew, shards of glass. No, just deliberate cuts. Freaked, I called the police. Their questions routine while my heart raced. No proof, but I knew. Hotel staff upped security, cameras whirring, but safety felt fragile. A few days passed in tense limbo, then another lawyer meeting to finalize papers. Grace and Jake were there, the room thick with unspoken venom. They barely spoke, but their stares drilled holes, Grace's smug, Jake's menacing. We signed forms, pens scratching like nails on chalkboard. At the end, Jake cornered me in the hall, his breath hot. Huge mistake not giving up, he growled. This isn't over, you'll regret it. I walked away without a word, spine straight, but inside, fear mixed with defiance. That night, in my room with curtains drawn, I reflected on the whirlwind since Dad's death. Lies from the wedding era echoing now, pressures mounting, isolation a cocoon turned cage. Threats, vandalism, greed, it was exhausting, but surrendering wasn't an option. I'd fight for what was mine, no matter the cost. Little did I know, the worst was brewing. The days after that tense lawyer meeting blurred into a relentless grind of anxiety and resolve. I'd walked away from Jake's parting threat with my head high, but back in the hotel, doubt crept in like fog rolling off the nearby river. The room's generic decor, beige walls, a landscape print that screamed forgettable, did little to comfort me as I replayed the scene. Grace's icy stare, Jake's clenched jaw, the scratch of pens on paper sealing Dad's final wishes. I hadn't asked for the largest share. 40% felt like a burden, not a boon, especially with their greed turning it into a battlefield. But why me? Dad's letter hinted at regrets, but it didn't explain favoring me over Grace, the golden child now. Maybe it was his quiet way of making amends, acknowledging I'd been the one pushed aside. I paced the carpet, worn from countless guests, my socks whispering against the fibers. Sleep evaded me that night, the city's hum outside a mocking lullaby. Every creak in the hall had me bolting upright, convinced Jake was making good on his words. Morning brought no relief. My phone lit up with more anonymous texts, variations on "give it up or else," laced with insults that made my skin crawl. I screenshot them all, forwarding to the lawyer like a ritual, but it felt futile. Who was I kidding? The police report on the tires had gone nowhere, just another file in a stack. I tried distracting myself with work emails, the glow of my laptop screen harsh in the dim room, but focus slipped. Memories of the funeral crashed in, the church pews hard under me, floral scents cloying, whispers from relatives eyeing me like an intruder. Mom's accusation, "here for the money," still stung as if grief wasn't reason enough. And Grace, swollen with pregnancy, playing the widow's daughter while I was the outcast. The will reading had amplified it all. In that stuffy office, the lawyer's monotone voice listing percentages, me at 40, Emma 30, Mom 20, Grace a measly 10. Grace's gasp, Jake's curse under his breath, it was chaos. "She abandoned us," Grace had shrieked. "We need it for the baby." Demands flew, "sign it over, be reasonable, think of family." I refused, voice steady despite the knot in my throat, but their threats started right there, Jake leaning in close after. "You'll pay if you don't." Emma called mid-morning, her voice a lifeline in the storm. "They're still raging," she said, describing home like a war zone. Grace slamming doors, Mom muttering about fairness. Jake saying you'll regret fighting. I reassured her, but inside, fear mixed with fury. Why couldn't they grieve like normal people? Dad's passing should have united us, but greed shredded any chance. I decided to visit his grave that afternoon, needing space from the hotel's confines. The cemetery was peaceful, wind rustling leaves, gravestones standing sentinel. I knelt by the fresh earth, tracing his name on the marker, the stone cool under my fingers. "Why'd you do it, Dad?" I whispered. His letter burned in my pocket, apologies too late but stirring something. Validation, maybe. If he'd spoken up during Grace's betrayal, stood against Mom's flip, things might have differed. But regrets wouldn't change now. As I left, a car idled nearby, too coincidental. Paranoia? Or Jake's doing? I hurried back, heart pounding. The harassment ramped up over the next few days, turning my temporary stay into a siege. More texts, calls from blocked numbers, hissing accusations. "Greedy witch," one voicemail spat. I changed my number, but somehow they found it. Jake's tech job, probably. Then a knock at the door late one evening. I peered through the peephole. A stranger, burly, asking for me by name. "Message from your family," he said. I didn't open, calling security instead, their footsteps echoing as they escorted him away. No proof it was Jake, but the timing screamed it. Emma confirmed later. Grace bragging about handling me. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, but surrendering the inheritance? No, it wasn't just money. It was Dad's last stand for me, a recognition of the pain they'd ignored. By week's end, I met the lawyer again, papers stacking like barriers. We discussed protections. Wills were ironclad, but their threats worried him. "Document everything," he advised, his office lamp casting long shadows. I nodded. but wariness settled deep. Back at the hotel, I ordered room service. The trays clink, a small comfort. As I ate, staring at the TV's muted glow, resolve hardened. They demanded I give up my share for their needs, but what about mine? Years of betrayal, now this. Initial threats were evolving into something darker, but I wouldn't break. Little did I know, the escalation was just beginning, testing limits I didn't know I had. The escalation hit like a freight train in the days following that stranger at my door. I'd barely caught my breath from the will's fallout, the demands still ringing in my ears, Grace's shrill, "We need it for the baby," and Jake's muttered, "You'll pay." Now it felt like they were everywhere, shadows lurking in every corner of my temporary life. I stayed holed up in the hotel, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun filtering through like accusing fingers. Work calls were my only anchor, voices on the line discussing projects while my mind wandered to Dad's grave, the cool stone under my palm. But even that peace was tainted. I'd spotted that idling car, engine humming low, and now paranoia colored everything. A knock from housekeeping made me jump, my heart slamming against my ribs. I ordered food in, the delivery guy's neutral face suddenly suspicious. Was he watching? Reporting back? The anonymous texts kept coming, evolving from vague warnings to personal jabs. "We know where you sleep," one read. "Hand over the share or regret it." I documented it all, fingers flying over my phone, but exhaustion was setting in, a heavy fog that made thinking straight impossible. Amid the chaos, a call from the lawyer pulled me back to the estate office a few days later. The place felt familiar now, almost oppressive with its stacks of files and the faint scent of ink. He had more details to review, but first, he slid an envelope across the desk. "Your father left this for you," he said, his voice measured, "to be given when things settled or didn't." My breath caught, Dad's handwriting on the front, neat and deliberate, like his rare notes when I was a kid. I hadn't expected this, not after the will's shock. Hands trembling slightly, I opened it right there, the paper crisp against my skin. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs in his steady script. He apologized for not being the father I needed during the Grace mess, for staying silent when Mom flipped sides. "I knew it was wrong," he wrote, "but I felt trapped, scared of losing more. You deserved my support, and I regret not giving it." He mentioned regrets about our strained talks, how he'd admired my independence but never said it. Reading it, emotions crashed over me, anger that he hadn't spoken alive, sadness for lost chances, and a tiny spark of closure, like a door cracking open. Why now through a letter? If he'd stood up back then, during the kitchen confrontation or Grace's pregnancy reveal, maybe the family wouldn't have shattered. I folded it carefully, tucking it into my bag, the weight of it both burden and balm. Leaving the office, the letter's words echoed as I drove, traffic a blur of honking and exhaust. Emma called en route, upset about Grace spreading more lies, calling me a thief to neighbors, painting herself as the wronged one. "She's saying you're pitting us against her," Emma whispered, like the walls had ears. It wasn't new, but with the letter fresh, it stung deeper. Dad had seen the truth, yet done nothing. Back at the hotel, I tried unwinding with a hot shower, steam clouding the mirror, but threats intruded. My phone buzzed incessantly, unknown numbers accusing me of family destruction. I blocked them, but they popped up fresh, relentless. Then, heading to my car for a quick errand, I found the tires slashed again, deeper cuts this time, rubber splayed like wounds. The parking lot's asphalt shimmered under sodium lights, empty except for a distant figure vanishing around a corner. Freaked, I called the police once more, their flashlights sweeping as they took notes, but no leads. "Could be random," the officer said, but I knew better. Jake's handiwork, escalating to intimidate. That night, I sat with Emma over takeout in my room, plastic containers steaming with Chinese food, trying to keep it normal. We talked about her day, avoiding the heavy, but she sensed my edge. "The letter, did it help?" she asked. I nodded, sharing bits, how Dad's apology felt belated but real. It gave some closure amid the mess, a reminder I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed. But as she left, hugging tight, fear resurfaced. More texts rolled in. "Watch your back." I forwarded them to the lawyer, who suggested extra precautions. The harassment was intensifying, turning psychological. Whispers of being followed, odd calls at odd hours. One evening, a package arrived at the front desk, no sender. Inside, anonymous notes echoing the texts, scribbled threats about the inheritance. It was too much. I beefed up room locks, avoided going out alone. Reflecting on Dad's words, I felt a surge of resolve. He'd regret it in action, and I wouldn't repeat it. But the threats were wearing me down, testing my limits in ways I'd never imagined. Little did I know, they were about to push even further, forcing me to fight back harder. The threats didn't let up after that package of scribbled notes arrived, each one feeling like a personal invasion that chipped away at my sanity. I'd stared at the handwriting in the dim hotel light, pages filled with details about my routines, times I'd met Emma, places I'd grabbed coffee, even notes on Dad's will percentages. It was as if someone had been shadowing me, turning my grief into a game. I snapped photos for the lawyer, the flash reflecting off the paper, then handed it over to the police, their questions probing but yielding no quick answers. "We'll investigate," they said, but I saw the doubt in their eyes. This was family drama gone wild, not some high-profile case. Back in my room, I double-checked locks, the click echoing my unease. Sleep came in fits, dreams twisted with Jake's face lurking in shadows. The inheritance demands echoed too. Grace's pleas for the baby's sake, Jake's insistence I didn't deserve it. But Dad's letter had shifted something in me. No more regrets like his. I'd stand firm. A week later, the harassment took a darker turn. Emma and I were heading back from dinner, her laughter a rare bright spot as we walked through the lobby's polished floors, chandeliers casting warm glows. Then I noticed him, a guy loitering by the elevators, eyes flicking our way too often. Not casual, deliberate. My skin prickled, instincts screaming warning. We hurried into the elevator, doors sliding shut with a ding, and I whispered to Emma, "That guy, he's watching." She nodded, wide-eyed, clutching my arm. In the room, I called the front desk, voice steady despite the shake. "Check the cameras," I urged. They promised patrols, but it didn't ease the knot in my stomach. Was this Jake's doing? Hiring someone to intimidate? The texts ramped up that night. "We're close, give up the share." I forwarded them, building my case, but fear was morphing into anger. Enough hiding. Time to push back. The next morning, resolve fueled me. I called the lawyer from my balcony, city sounds below a distant roar. "This has to stop," I said, detailing the stalker, the notes, the endless messages. He agreed. Escalation warranted action. "Restraining order against Jake," he suggested. "We have evidence." Filing felt empowering, paperwork a shield against their chaos. But Grace and Jake didn't take it lying down. More threats poured in, promising regret. I kept low, sticking to the hotel, Emma visiting when safe. We talked about Dad's letter again, how his apology lingered like unfinished business. "He should have said it sooner," she agreed, but it bonded us closer amid the mess. Court day arrived sooner than expected, the building's marble halls cool and echoing as I walked in with my lawyer. Nerves buzzed, but I held my head high, suit crisp against my skin. Grace and Jake were there, looking composed, her with that victim air, him smirking like it was a joke. We sat on opposite benches, tension thick as fog. The judge called us, gavel-tapping order. I presented my side, texts, slashed tires, the notebook, the lobby guy. "It's harassment," my lawyer argued, evidence stacked like bricks. Jake denied it all, voice smooth. "She's exaggerating, bitter about the will, making trouble." Grace nodded along, claiming I was the instigator. Lies piled up, I was greedy, tearing the family apart, overreacting to old drama. The judge listened, eyes sharp, flipping through photos. My heart pounded during cross, Jake's lawyer grilling me on proof it was him. But the evidence held, patterns too clear to ignore. Relief flooded when the judge ruled, restraining order granted. "No contact, stay away." Jake's face twisted in fury as we left, but legally I had protection. For the first time in weeks, breathing came easier. Weeks passed with tentative calm. Threats slowed, no more slashed tires or shadows. The order worked, a barrier they couldn't cross without consequences. I started apartment hunting, craving permanence over hotel transients. Emma updated me. Grace acting normal at home, like no court loss, but tension simmered. Then, one morning, a text from an unknown, not a threat, but a link. I clicked hesitantly, stomach dropping at the sight, a whole page trashing me. Lies about greed, photos from Dad's funeral captioned heartless, half-truths twisting my story. It was vile, designed to smear. I screenshot everything, rage boiling. "Get it down," I told the lawyer who filed takedown requests. It vanished days later, a small win, but the damage lingered. Who'd seen it? Strangers judging based on Grace's spin. That night, talking to Emma, weariness hit. They won't stop, I said, but she encouraged me. The court victory had shifted power. I wasn't alone. As I sipped tea in my room, steam rising, I felt relief's edge, temporary but real. The battles had begun, testing my limits, but I'd held. Yet I knew Grace and Jake's desperation. This pause was just that. The final push loomed, darker than before. The calm after the restraining order felt fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over deep water, ready to crack at any moment. I'd won in court, watching Jake's smug expression crumble as the judge banged the gavel, but victory didn't erase the unease that had settled into my bones. The website takedown was a relief, those twisted lies vanishing from the digital ether, but echoes lingered. Who'd read them, believed them? I stayed vigilant in the hotel, double-checking doors and windows, the hum of the air conditioner a constant white noise against my racing thoughts. Emma's calls were my anchor, her updates a mix of home life and worry. Grace is quiet now, she'd say, but I heard the undertone. Desperation brewing. Jake couldn't approach legally, but their greed over the inheritance wouldn't vanish. Dad's 40% share loomed large, a symbol of his belated justice, yet it painted a target on me. Nights blurred with what-ifs. If I'd given in early, would the threats have stopped? But no, surrendering would have validated their betrayal, from Grace's affair to this mess. 2 weeks post-court, I dared hope for normalcy. Apartment viewings started, keys jingling in agents' hands as I toured sunny spaces, imagining a fresh start away from hotel sterility. But then, a package arrived at the front desk, no return address, wrapped plain like a forgotten gift. Curiosity overrode caution. I opened it in my room, afternoon light slanting through blinds. Inside, an old notebook, pages yellowed and dog-eared. Flipping it open, my blood ran cold. Handwritten notes about me. Dates of my movements, coffee runs with Emma, lawyer visits, even grave trips to Dad's site. Scribbles on family dynamics, will details, threats woven in like, she'll pay soon. Someone had been tracking me, intimate and invasive. My hands shook as I photographed every page, the ink blurring in my vision. Was this Jake defying the order? Or Grace pulling strings? I called the lawyer first, voice tight, then police, who bagged it as evidence. Stalking material, the officer noted, but no prints yet. Paranoia spiked. Every hallway shadow seemed alive. That evening, heading back from a quick store run, bags rustling, I spotted him again. The lobby guy from before, loitering near elevators, phone in hand but eyes on me. Heart hammering, I played casual, striding past with forced nonchalance, but his gaze burned. In my room, door bolted, I alerted security, their radios crackling as they searched. No sign, but sleep evaded me. Bedsheets twisted in my grip. Emma got the full story that night, her worry mirroring mine. Jake's been asking about you, she confessed. Where you're staying. It clicked. The surveillance, the notebook, all tied to him. Unsafe here, I packed essentials, checking out quietly, not even telling Emma my new spot. A different hotel across town, anonymous and distant, became my hideout. The drive there tense with rearview checks. Quiet days followed, no texts or calls, but tension hummed. Then my lawyer rang with bombshell news. Jake arrested. Caught trying to break into my old room, tools in hand, intent unclear but sinister. Relief washed over me, mixed with vindication. He'd crossed the line, exposed. Police updates trickled in, charges of attempted burglary, violating the order. Court loomed again for testimony, but safety returned, a weight lifting. I moved to an apartment weeks later, address secret, fresh paint smelling of new beginnings. Emma visited sparingly, our bond unbreakable despite the chaos. Months on, normalcy crept back, work routines, cautious outings, the inheritance settled without further fight. And as I look back now, the whirlwind fades into a softer haze, the sharp edges of betrayal and threats smoothing with time. I've rebuilt, piece by piece, in this quiet space where sunlight filters through curtains, casting gentle patterns on the walls. Emma's laughter over phone calls reminds me of the good that endured, her innocence, a light in the darkness we navigated together. Grace and Jake? Distant echoes, their greed a lesson in boundaries I now hold firm. Dad's letter rests in a drawer. His words a quiet apology that brings peace on reflective evenings. When the world outside slows and the air carries a whisper of forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. Strength grew from the ruins, a resilience I didn't know I possessed, blooming like flowers after a storm. Life moves forward, gentler now, with cautious steps and open hearts, fading into the calm where healing begins, soft as a sigh on the wind.